Yeah, happy Tuesday. Good morning, and hey now, PASW staff, clients, and friends join us for Classical Tuesday. When we look at composers, we've looked at so many, and I'm proud of all the work we've done. We've come so far from, doing the classics, Beethoven, Bach, Brahms, all the Bs, and today we're going to look at somebody a little bit more contemporary, and we're going to see the influence of rock music. But he had no idea that maybe he was laying the foundation for rock music. So way too much fun today. Almost too much fun yesterday with Karate Kid. So your film scoring assignment. So get that into me, by today would be nice. And we'll see the results for Friday, the last scene of Daniel's-son, and when he kicks Johnny Lawrence. Great moment. Something, epic and fun and, a little bit over the top. Winning in the end, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so right back to where I was starting beforehand. Today we're going to look at probably the second most, or just as famous, because we looked at Franz Liszt, most famous Hungarian composer, pianist, and ethnomusicologist. We'll talk about that term. Today we'll be looking at Bela Bartók. So we looked at Franz Liszt. Remember, Franz Liszt was the first rock star? He sold out all those concerts playing piano and playing his original compositions, but brilliant pianist. He was Hungarian too, and Bartók is as well. So Bartók studied musicology, which is kind of what we do in this class, and ethnomusicology, just like I said. That's the study of music in its social and cultural way. So in a cultural and social context. So if you go over to another village or society and you understand, culturally and socially what their music is sounds like, what it's about, all of these things, it probably still happens today. But back then, this is late 19th century, early 20th century. All those many lands weren't discovered and regions weren't discovered. Probably still today, but I don't know about geography. But it's going to other cultures and finding their social and cultural context. But from a musical perspective, obviously, that's ethnomusicology. So of course he's going to be using folk music, right? Folk music, classical music, because it's under the realm of that, and modernism, because. Why? Because the 20th century is about to start, and that's when we get modernism. So he's going to be using folk music from Hungary, from Romania, and Siberia, other places where he would travel and record it, write it down. And he was very fond of the dance rhythms. We're going to hear a lot of these rhythms, and also harmonies too, different harmonies. It's a great way to get inspired. We looked at Villalobos going into the mountains, finding rhythms that it's a good way for it's one thing because these guys were trained in conservatories and stuff, and that's okay, that's great. You need that training. But then if you're going to get your own flavor, or if you want to expand your mind, you're going to say, okay, enough of this, I'm going to go undercover and find out what music is going on in the woods, in the mountains, and other places other than the conservatory, because that's good to talk about ideas, but then that also shows a whole lack of, you're only just talking about ideas that your professor taught you, and then you become a teacher, and then you teach those students, and it's fine, but it's you don't get out. It's nice to go out and actually become a renegade and undercover, and to see what real music is happening around us other than the conservatory. So Bartók's born in Romania. It's Romania today, 1881. Let's go to Reseda, where we were with the Karate Kid, and let's go to Romania right next door. And then context, our timeline. He's going to be influenced by Strauss. He meets Strauss at his premiere in 1902 of also Sprach Zarathustra. Also influenced by Wagner, because how could you not be? These people, composers, were so influential. Influenced by Debussy as well. So we've talked about all these composers. So if he's born in 1881, he's kind of at the end of the Romantic era, right? Because by the 20th century, Romanticism is sort of done. Born mostly almost right when Stravinsky are going on at the same time. But Debussy's a little before. Janacek, he's going to be influenced by him because Janacek was also into folk music too. Not as much as Bartók though. So his mother was a pianist. Again, we talk about early influence and who influences them. Many times it's the mother, but already a child genius. I mean, he could pick out rhythms, pick out things on the piano. Before he was able to talk, he could really play the piano, and studies piano music. Studies with Liszt's former teacher, and begins teaching as a piano professor in Budapest. And then in 1908 or so, he starts traveling to the countryside. This is where he's going to be influenced by folk rhythms, and to collect and for research folk melodies. What have people been playing? And a lot of these melodies that he would discover were pentatonic scales. Penta meaning 5, right? So that's a musical scale that maybe we've looked at, but he found a lot of similarities with this to Asian folk traditions. Asian music uses pentatonic music a lot. So he's going Siberia, Central Asia, all these other places to find music. And he's collecting and he's arranging some of this music, and he's going to be using it in his music. He writes ballets, he writes one opera, string quartets, which we're going to listen to, and he starts influencing actually Stravinsky and Schoenberg and Strauss. So people that he's his contemporaries, they're beginning to be influenced by him because he's got his own musical language that he's developing. It's not serialism. It's not what Schoenberg's talking about with 12-tone music. Even though it doesn't sound super tonal, he's still using diatonic harmony. It's sometimes hard to tell what key a piece is in. And so he's not using a system of those 12 tones that we looked at with Schoenberg, but it's not sounding anything like Tchaikovsky. So it's lack of a better word, modern. The 20s he's writing, and then World War II comes to America, and right before his death, and more kind of well known as a pianist and a teacher, not yet a composer until, at least in America. Dies at 64, age 64, in a hospital in New York from leukemia. We're gonna look at a piece in 1928, one of his most famous pieces, String Quartet.
I got a big decision to make here. Do I go with Oscar Peterson or Bartók String Quartet number 5?
Why don't you play your Oscar Peterson and leave Bartók out so that everybody can see it?
It's a good idea.
We know string quartets. We listened to a lot of Beethoven's string quartets. That fugue, remember that 20-minute fugue piece that we listened to that was so ahead of its time? Bartók's going to be kind of picking up maybe where Beethoven left off, a lot longer. Beethoven's way earlier, and what he's going to be doing is crazy. I mean, take a listen. doesn't sound like any other music. It sounds crazy, right? I mean, it's classical music, but it's I mean, you know, crazy. I know that's not a great word, but influences from Hungarian music, Romanian music, Bulgarian music. It sounds like it, even if we don't know what that kind of music, that exact folk music is. It sounds like it's from other cultures, other places, and it's all kind of combined into this. You know, the string quartet is a kind of a classical ensemble, traditional classical ensemble, but he's bringing his own rhythms and melodies and harmony into the string quartet, but playing kind of folk-like music. For 1928, this is pretty crazy. It's abstract, right? But it's very coloristic. It's got a lot of color in it, and yeah, it's dissonant. It's not atonal. It's not tonal, I guess, but the rhythms are just so cool. I hear, at least last night when I was listening to this, they sound like guitars, and it sounds like, I mean, we talked about Nirvana. We did a whole class on grunge music and grunge guitar. Obviously, this is a different kind of music, but the rhythms, take a listen again and tell me that you don't hear pulsating, driving, the guitars could be playing this, and it sounds almost like an early rock ensemble. Tremendous energy, tremendous fun, and just real raw. This is something that, 40, 50, 60 years later, rock bands would be playing with this angst. There's a lot of angst, right? I mean, just an unbelievable piece. And then, you can see his influence for film music. This sounds a lot like Bernard Herrmann. We've talked about Bernard Herrmann so many times. Probably the most famous is the Psycho score with those strings, right? So earlier, I talked about Bernard Herrmann having classical influences, and I didn't just say that. Now I'm connecting that. Bartók was one of his influences. So he's getting classical music from Bartók, and Bartók's music sounds very much like it could be used for film music, and Kubrick used it. A lot of filmmakers have used Bartók's music. A lot of composers have, John Williams, Bernard Herrmann, those guys have taken a lot from Bartók. So that's just a little flavor, a little taste of Bartók. He really turned Hungarian folk music into becoming his own modern classical music, using indigenous music and all these techniques to create something crazy. It's not something you want to put on at a dinner party, but still genius. So hope you enjoyed that. Bela Bartók. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at something really funny and nothing to do with Bartók at all, so we'll keep it fresh. Okay, see you tomorrow. Bye.